Good evening, all. Welcome to the Ghost Show. If you ever wonder why we Kickstarter our books, that opening cost us $22 million. We're still making the payments on that one. So, but thank you all for joining us. I am Professor Christopher McLaughlin, and I'm very blessed to be the creative pit boss of Ghost Show Press, a small but mighty voice in the world of independent creator first media, talking about outre and strange media, in particular the cinema. And we do these podcasts periodically because they're fun, because we like to talk to you all and hear your questions, and because I work with the best writers on the planet. Fight me. And also because at the moment, in a wild coincidence, we just have to be running a Kickstarter campaign. I know it's this crowd funding thing. You may have heard rumors about it. Well, there you go. So there's where we're at, and we're currently raising money for Volume 4, which strongly implies that yes, there were three others. Yes, because there would be the original Transgressive Horror, there would be Subversive Sci-Fi number 2, and number 3. There you go, Fantastic Flops. And we're back with number 4, Transgressive Horror Resurrected. Yeah, we're going back to the scare film and because really, seriously, horror. I mean, if there, I know there are people that don't like it, but there are more than enough who do, and they back that with their fanatical devotion and dollars. And we're always happy to delve into something that we all seem to love. And as if to put an exclamation on my point that I work with the best writers and creators ever, we have as our guest tonight Mr. Tim Thompson. Tim Thompson first came to my notice by his amazing film No Resistance, which immediately stole my heart. It's one of those rare films that I watched it and then I watched it again just to appreciate the love and the effort in every single frame of it. And I have
No
a theory that,
giant
like,
bugs in it at all, even.
I'm sorry.
There's no giant bugs in it at all, even.
Strongly implied, though, in some scenes. You to me, at some in many circumstances, you can't be mad at a film for what it doesn't show you. So yes. Yeah. And I'm a great believer that talented people are probably talented in more than one way. So Tim was kind enough to contribute an essay to us for on Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow, which is still so freaking good. Oh, and
Yes.
now we're very blessed having back for Transgressive Horror Resurrected, where we're getting all Cronenberg up on you guys. We're going to be talking about antiviral. Yes. All righty. So,
Yeah.
Tim, what takes you to the younger Cronenberg's outstanding and truly transgressive bit of work? What drew you to this extraordinarily transgressive film?
Well, not to lie, of course, but the first thing that drew me was that he's a Cronenberg. That's obvious. It actually took me a long time to see Antiviral. Possessor was the first of his that I'd seen, and then Infinity Pool. And what at first to me seemed like a novelty, slowly as he gained more work done, I realized he was doing something that was extremely cool, which was being Cronenbergian but not being boring or repetitive. That he was actually doing the other Cronenbergian, something new and fresh, but with the same set of tools that I thought was really great. And then finally, I got a hold of Antiviral, which is his first feature. So it's the roughest, of course. It's the first out of the gate. It's from a couple years ago, 2012. It's not available on streaming anywhere, although I believe there's a rumor it's on the short list for Shudder. So that will be great. Once it's available again, more people will be able to see it. But up until then, the only way to really get a hold of it was to find this Canadian Blu-ray DVD combo from Montreal, and boy, am I glad I did.
I say a quick hello to our super backer, super fan Sean. Hello, Sean, and he's going out to play Call of Cthulhu. Can you wish someone luck in Lovecraft? I hope you go insane last.
Please survive.
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. Please be the guy who's in an asylum telling this story after the fact. There you go. There, that's good. It's good wishes for Lovecraft. All righty. Yes. All right. Yes. And
so
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say. So it's a great movie to talk about because not very many people have seen it, even Cronenbergian folks. And it's so, part of the family business and yet so individual. I talk about in the essay, it's transgressive horror, it's body horror, but it's also kind of a cyberpunk near future science fiction thing. It's an extremely bloody and razor sharp media satire. It plays with some of the same kind of body image, health, wellness industry stuff that, oh man, have you seen the trailer for the Demi Moore film, The Substance, yet?
Yeah, that's intriguing.
That looks great. Well, this plays in that sandbox too. So, with all that going for it, it was just a natural. So, thank you for letting me write about it.
Oh, honor and a pleasure, sir. Yeah, and it had been a while since I had seen it, and I greatly enjoyed reading your work. It gave me a chance to mentally review it, and I guess by nature we kind of set some unreasonable experiences for second and third generation creators. We live in this weird world where we expect them to be exactly the same as their forebears, and but if they are, we call them hacks, and if they and woe unto them if they deviate in any way. But I think it's a work that stands on its own, a point that I think you fabulously make, and as you say in the essay, not to take your words from you, but it does seem to be of that continuing Cronenberg family motif of no matter what we are gifted technology wise, we'll find a way to make it sick and perverted.
Yeah, and we have to reckon with it. Yeah, again, I don't want to spoil the whole article because we want you to read it, but Brandon is really cool to me. Other people might disagree, but I think he's more warmly human than his father's. His work is more squishy than his father's work from an emotional standpoint. I call him hornier. He's the hornier David Cronenberg because he's not afraid to get like in the juice, which sounds stupid to say about Cronenberg, but he's just more hot-blooded. And on a technical level, he does things like favor more extreme close-ups of people as characters. He puts you in them more, I think, than Cronenberg does. So it's really cool to see somebody play with the same kind of dangerous stuff, but uncomfortably more identified with the people that it's happening to. I don't know.
Yeah. I've always thought one of David's gifts was how he seems to be able to give you enough to care about a character before he immediately starts doing horrible things to them. Although I would imagine, though now that I think some of them are a little more of an extended beatdown, like The Brood or Videodrome, but still in all, it's like, okay, I'm interested in this person's story. they're going to have parasites crawling around on their chest any second. I have doomed my heart has doomed this person on screen.
Yeah. And politically, what this movie shows about celebrity, and particularly the images of women, is uncomfortably prescient.
Oh yeah,
not prescient because we've been doing that for centuries, but he definitely charted the course that we're not seeming to stray from very well. So that part of it is also really nice. Or as somebody who read the article said, that sounds horrible. I love it. I'm never going to watch that.
You know, from my own media consumption, the when you were talking about the very powerful things this film has to say about the commodification of celebrities, especially younger women, it reminded me of a book that came out in the last year called Quantum Criminals. It was sort of a societal overview of Steely Dan, with the ultimate conclusion that, like, the reason Steely Dan seems to be staging a comeback is the world has finally gotten as weird as their songs. and they got around to their 1980 hit Hey 19, which I think most people would know, and talking about how this is Steely Dan in 1980 presaging a society where, you know, the hypersexualization of underage girls would become like a major chunk of our economy. Like, wow,
it's true.
Yeah.
And they didn't call it the royal scam.
Not to wander too far into Dan, but you want to know the great story where the title comes from?
Royal scam.
Quantum Criminals. Why it's Quantum?
Yes, I do.
Quantum Criminals. While they were during the 18 hellish months of recording the album Gaucho, one of the many terrible things that happened to them was Walter Becker got hit by a car just crossing the street in New York, hit and run driver. As far as I know, they never caught whoever hit him. And his first statement from the hospital about the accident was the car and I attempted to occupy the same space and time simultaneously. I am a quantum criminal. And you know, for all of us, where, you know, if we were lucky to survive something like that, you know, like the coolest thing we'd be able to say would have the word motherfucker in it. You know, it's just, yeah, you know, I just mad respect for that perspective, which survives even being hit by a car. So.
Yes, no, I love it. It's it uncomfortably recalls a punchline for a completely different joke I heard yesterday. Ooh. And I don't remember the joke, but the punchline is, that's not a dick move. That's a Philip K. Dick move.
Oh man. Oof. You see, anybody knows classic sci-fi, you don't even need to know the joke. You know where they were going with that. Ouch. Wow. You know, we're going to do another sci-fi volume at some point. I probably should write that one down.
See, that's going to be hard for me. I mean, I play the game in my head of like, okay, what's the other thing you would write about? And I've seen, like, since you agreed to let me write about Antiviral, I've seen 7 horror movies that should be in this book.
Ooh.
That are not. Not to say that there aren't amazing films talked about in this book. The most recent, your most recent artist profile on the Kickstarter from today is about a movie that I don't think I've even heard of before. And so it's fun to be constantly surprised by what people are digging up for this.
Yes. That's by our novelist friend, Alex Bledsoe. Alex, just another reason why you folks should support the project. Alex handed in a really, really solid first draft, explaining to us why, you know, this, you know, especially if you're into rural horror. And then he asked me, McGee, can I do a second draft? Because I've just made contact with like 3 or 4 people that actually worked on the movie, and they're willing to talk about it for the first time in decades. I'm like, okay.
Oh my God, sure. That's great.
Yes.
What's it called? Eyes of Fire?
Eyes of Fire, yes.
Yeah. Yes. So I don't know what that is.
Well, here you go. We can direct you to it and everything. And speaking of directions, our surprise run-in guests tonight, Okay. In running for the coolest person of the universe in the universe. Seriously, anytime that you're just randomly checking Star Trek trivia and the first thing that pops up is a picture of your friend helping to build the sets for the first Trek movie, you know that has to be one of the coolest people you ever meet. The one and only Lisa Morton, the novelist, the ghost hunter, the Horror Writers Association of America past president, and still a guiding light in the horror community. And believe it or not, people that cool right for me. Good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, hi. Sorry to drop in late.
The best surprises in life. Right. Now, I don't want to go too inside, but on behalf of everybody that knows you, we have to ask, how are the kittens?
Oh my God, they're adorable. My living room is just completely toasted. I mean, there's like the draperies look like an old burial shroud. The furniture's got lots of little nubbies on it, but they're so cute, it's worth it.
Yeah. Oh gosh. For those of you not blessed enough to be to the continuing adventures of Lisa's life, Lisa dedicated a good chunk of her summer to rescuing some feral kittens. We were all glued to the drama of the traps catching every living creature in her area, and which peaked with catching the same raccoon twice. And the immortal comment, dude, FFS.
And at one point, catching 3 raccoons at once in one trap.
At that point, you got to kind of take the hint, I think.
You'd think so. They weren't real. The raccoons and the opossums are just not real hint takers.
You see, I'm thinking if we ever blow ourselves off the planet and the raccoons inherit it, like Lisa will be their lawgiver. They'll be building statues of her, and like they'll be forbidding things in her name. This would not please the lawgiver. So yes, at least that's my vision of the future. While we're on it,
hey, I'll take it.
All right. Okay. Well, now, so Lisa, who. I got to tell you, folks, honestly, with Tim and Lisa, part of the many, many joys of doing these books is like, what are they going to pick for this topic? It's a genuine thrill and pleasure, and always a surprise. And Lisa, even more surprising in a book where we're going to do Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you went deep into the backstory of horror and found a gem. So for the folks who haven't seen it yet, you want to tell us a little bit about your movie?
I chose a 1922 silent horror film / documentary called Hexen, although it's also known by the title Witchcraft Through the Ages. Which was a film that those of us who grew up reading famous monsters of film like that would see these stills of these horrific looking demonic things and versions of Satan and witches and torture scenes and just think, what is this movie? And it was very hard to see for a while, but it has become such a classic now. There are many editions of it out there with different soundtracks, by the way. And it's worth seeking out some of the differing soundtracks on it. It gives the film a very different viewing experience. But I wanted to do what I thought could maybe be the real first transgressive horror film. And even though I know that The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari was technically released before Hexen, I don't think it is nearly as transgressive. For those who haven't seen Hexen, I'll try to describe it in brief. It starts as a kind of standard documentary, and that goes on for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And it talks about the history of the cosmology and the history of the universe and the history of religion and blah, blah, blah. And it has some amusing visuals with like some little sort of hand moved figures and towns and that kind of thing. But then it gets into the real horror movie aspect, which is following some elderly women who are accused by the Inquisition of witchcraft and the fantasies of the inquisitors and sometimes of the elderly women as well about going to satanic rituals and orgies. And I mean, this is a movie that was shot in 1922, and honest to God has an image of witches lining up to kiss the devil's ass. Which, even now in 2024 would be somewhat transgressive. And back then, I'm sure it must have been kind of mind blowing to a lot of people. I know the reviews I looked at the time were somewhat shocked by the film. And it has remained relevant enough that it's had some interesting re-releases. It had a re-release in the 70s, which is when they brought it out under the title Witchcraft Through the Ages. And they recut that slightly, but it still retains some really interesting power. It's very visually stunning quite often. And I mean, still has the power, I think, to genuinely shock, which is pretty amazing for a movie that's over a century old.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to spoil your essay for the folks who haven't had the pleasure of reading it as I have, but you listing off all the things we see in the film and then just saying like, oh, by the way, did I mention this was made in 1922? Is immediate. We always go by date. I'm so glad this is leading off the book. Really, we're gonna hook you right off the bat here. It's like right, like it'll be like page 9 or 10. You're already lining up to kiss the devil's butt. That's what we're giving you here with this Kickstarter.
And it was really fun to write, and it was fun to research, because when I do these things, I try to do a deep dive. I prefer to give readers a little bit of the history and a little bit of the making of, along with my opinion and my experience of the film. And I learned so much about the filmmaker who made this, Benjamin Christensen. He was a really interesting guy who tried to make the leap over to Hollywood after this movie kind of established him, and that didn't go well. But yeah, it was a fascinating journey to take on discovering this film again.
I have this beautiful synchronized image in my head right now of this guy with his film cans full of devil butt smooching, going out to Hollywood with all these high hopes, syncing up with David Cronenberg, conning the Canadian government out of money to go make Shivers. And then, of course, leading us to Brandon and all that followed. And like, hey, here you go. To dreamers in their dreams. Here you go. That's our theme for tonight. So there you go. Thank you all.
Haxan had so much stock footage that pervaded the rest of the 20th century too. Like you see clips from it woven through a whole bunch of stuff through the mid-century, and then it would end up in like weird 80s music videos, and nobody knew where it came from. So it's like a spell that keeps telling itself,
Yeah, definitely.
All righty. Well, geez, I mean, we've had more surprise run-in tonights than any given episode of WWE Monday Night Raw, and joining us is one of my all-time favorite writers, who I'm blessed to now say evolved into one of my all-time favorite collaborators, and now one of my dearest friends, Mr. Mike Weatherford. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, good to be here.
Hey.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah. So, all right, now for those of you that again are just checking out our Kickstarter here and may see what we're up to here. Mike wrote another outstanding piece on a pair of movies, and that he rightly points out will be forever joined in everyone's mind, and also brought back fond memories of being two of the first films that I was trying to figure out how I could turn on our family's HBO box without anybody else knowing, to catch these bloody R-rated gems. And I, of course, talking about what for many people are the definitive horror movie, werewolf horror movies, The Howling and An American Werewolf in London. All right. So, Mike, what drew you to these two justifiable classics?
They've been long favorites. I saw them both in college. I think you alluded, they're always associated with one another because they came out 5 months apart in 1981. So I saw them at kind of a transitional time of life, and they were kind of transitional kinds of horror movies. They were still using the real time practical effects, but we were just starting to see innovations with the so-called air bladders and the things still done in live time on camera, but stuff we'd never seen before. And both movies share that. And there's a complicated backstory behind why that's the case that I go into a little bit in the piece. And then more than that, they were both what we kind of take for granted now as being a whole genre in itself, the horror comedy. But back then that wasn't as defined, and it wasn't as taken for granted as it is now.
Yeah, and another thing that I certainly took away from it, as I'm pretty sure I had a stack of Famous Monsters magazines with me as I watched The Howling. Early example of fan service there, at least for us monster kids and step kids, right? With that cast.
Annoyingly so, if you watch it now, it's like almost too much. But back then, pre-internet, that was pretty cool. All the little jokes and asides and cameos and things like that. Every movie changes every time you watch it because your perception, you see it from a slightly different angle. That's the one thing that at the time I thought was pretty cool, and now I'm kind of like, yeah, sometimes it's almost distracting.
I've always had this personal theory that Christopher Lee winds up in the sequel because he was originally invited to be a part of the first one, got the dates screwed up, but by the time he got there, they were already shooting a movie. So he's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Sure, hand me a script. Whatever.
Sequels are a whole nother. I think that was that phase in life where he'd come to the U.S. and by God, he was going to make it, and you couldn't help him from going, "Wow, this first one's great. This first one's awesome. This second one must be good, right?" The first one was so good, it's got to be made by the same people, right? Yeah, absolutely none of it. But yeah, you mentioned Forian, your Famous Monsters, and there he is in the bookstore scene holding his Famous Monsters with Curse of the Werewolf on the cover.
No doubt from Joe Dante's personal collection. Had to be.
He might have had a couple still at home.
Oh, by the way, okay, if we're okay. Sorry, apologize for the tangent, but just if we're going to talk about this period in Christopher Lee's career, I have to advocate for a film I really need to find an excuse to write about. But if you're looking for great underrated performances during this period in his life, he did a very, 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 very obscure 1980 film called Serial, which was an attempt to basically a film that attempted to comment on every trend that was going to be dead by the time the film was actually released. Sitting in a hot tub making jokes about your therapist. But Lee easily steals the movie as the leader of a gay biker gang. And if you want to see that just for shock value, yeah, okay, I get it. But you will be shocked how great he is in that part. As Lisa nods, oh my God, I'm surrounded by people weird enough to have already seen this film. I love you all. You guys are the best.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. My buddies that didn't go to college towns saw it. Again, all this during college, but I don't either. I was busy or didn't play in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I don't remember.
I would love to see the ad campaign for that in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Yeah. Yes. That Dracula guy? Well, he's in this.
I need to make a list of when people bring up stuff like this of movies I heard of and missed over the years, and look and see if they're on Tubi or something like that.
Yeah, he has a rather incredible last line in that movie, as I recall.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Oh yeah, it makes sitting through the other hour and a half totally worth your time, and that's
Right.
yeah, that's a claim for a film that lovably dated.
He made some Arabian Nights movie around that same time, and again,
Yes.
my buddies that went to commuter school saw it while I was off in the Big 8 school, and they went. I don't know the context of the quote, but for a couple of years they went around going "most unseemly."
That sounded good.
Oh goodness. Well, okay. Just as a curious publisher questioner, okay. I don't know about you guys, but like me, I have to sit down and whittle down. Whenever we do one of these, I have to sit down and and whittle through about 4 or 5 contenders here. So just curious, in this, multiverse crazed media environment that we have, roads not taken, paths not walked. Tim, did you have a close runner up, one that if like you couldn't have done antiviral for something, this would have been your backup plan, something else was on your radar?
Oh gosh, I imagine there were like 4 or 5, but I jettisoned them. If you, especially because, thanks, Mike, I've been watching all the shit on Tubi that I have not been able to see when it came out, and there's an embarrassing amount of riches there. So yeah, there are at least 10, but I'd have to keep a notebook.
Okay.
But if you ask me to write one right now, like you needed it at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's transgressive horror, I would probably write about Tower a Bright Day, just because it's one of those movies that's kind of obsessed me for the last couple of months.
Well, you want to take just a second, tell us what grabs you about that one? Maybe a little sneak preview where we're going in future volumes.
There's this thing that's kind of been happening with recent movies, especially in the queer community, where they're making movies that are using horror tropes in a really interesting way to make movies that are not exactly horror. But they're using the feeling of horror as a way to express a different way of having seen the world. And this is one of them, and the movies that Jane Schoenbrunn is making is some of them. And they're really interesting because if just a regular person walks into the movie theater seeing the marketing campaign for some of these things, they'll think it's a horror movie. Oh my God, it's a horror movie about internet tropes coming to life and killing teenagers. But when you watch the movie, none of that happens. All of the dread is there, but none of the actual mechanics of horror are there. It's instead a way to deal with the idea of identity. And so I would probably not as well as most people are right now, try to tackle one of those subjects. Because it's really fascinating to me right now.
Wow. And we grow everyone's watch list even further.
Definitely see a Tower Bright Day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, Lisa. Now that we live in a world where Exorcist 2 is getting a 4K UHD release, I know you have some fantastic other choices out there. So you have any cool runner ups for this volume? Any other horror or things maybe you're looking to get into in the future?
If there was going to be a volume 3, I would absolutely do a film from a couple of years ago called Hellbender. I am currently obsessed with the makers of that particular film. They are an actual honest-to-God family of people named Adams. They are the Adams family, spelled with 1 D. They have made 3 horror films, with a 4th one set to debut next week on Shudder, and it's already getting really good advance word. The one coming out on Shudder next week is called Hellhole. They have their 3rd feature is free on Tubi. It's called Where the Devil Roams. They are a family of 4 who make their movies on their compound in like upper state New York. Except Hellhole apparently is the first one that is actually shot outside of the U.S. But their movies always feature these incredible relationships because they are a real family. They frequently focus on like a mother-daughter kind of thing. And they're really, really good. I mean, they managed to avoid the downfalls of a lot of other like micro budget kind of things. They're really well scripted. They're really well shot. They're beautifully acted. I am a particular fan of the matriarch of the family who goes under the name Toby Poser. She's the only one who doesn't use Adams as her last name. And Hellbender is about a mother and a daughter who are two generations of witches. And it's insanely good. And transgressive, maybe in some really odd and interesting ways. So I would do an Addams Family movie.
That is so great. Tower of Bright Day and Hellbender get lumped together often. Because Tower of Bright Day is as I feel it's kind of true. They both have their differences, but the relationship of the mother-daughter in Hellbender is a lot like the relationship between two sisters in Tower of Bright Day. And it just leans completely into a lot of the tonal stuff. They both go in the same kind of weird tonal places. I wonder if you've seen that.
I haven't, and I'm wondering where I can find it.
It is also on Shudder.
Oh, okay, great.
And I want to hear what you have to say about it, because in the end, it isn't a horror movie, but it really wants you to feel like it was for a reason.
Okay, I like that. I will. My entertainment is planned for the evening now.
And I have to. I'm a little surprised by this, but I have to echo your love for Toby Poser, because my dear wife, when we first started dating, she was a lifelong fan of the long-running CBS soap Guiding Light, which I completely ignored until I saw Barbara Crampton on an episode, and horror legend Barbara Crampton from Reanimator and From Beyond, and Toby Poser had a great run on Guiding Light, and she was one of those people who like, this is somebody that could do something other than soaps. I wonder what that will be, and I got my answer tonight. So thank you. You've tied that into a bow after 30 years.
Oh, you've got to see these films, because apparently the reason they made a few non-horror films first, but she was a middle-aged actress looking for some more interesting roles, and she said, well, screw it, I'll write my own. And so their first horror film was called The Deeper You Dig. It's also really good, and she is fabulous in these films. I mean, she, to me, is just as good as any A-list actress working out there.
Bless her. All right, Mike, the guy who I have never been able to get close to guessing what you're going to do. I just know it's going to be awesome. But now, Howling and American Werewolf, great choices. But did you have a first runner up or anything else on your radar, or things you're thinking about for the future?
I think in our emails, I usually look at what's been grabbed already and then try to kind of work in between. And this time, I think you already had somebody doing a horror of Dracula and somebody doing Dr. Phibes. And so I was kind of into that idea, going back and watching childhood, teenage favorites with these old jaundiced eyes and seeing them the way they play now. If I flipped it, went more contemporary, another pairing, and I don't know if you have this in previous volumes, it would have been cool to have done Let Me In and Let the Right One In. Maybe I'll call dibs on that one if it hadn't been done for next time.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I actually scored the novel at a thrift shop, but I haven't read it yet. So yeah.
And if I can put my pitchman hat back on again, if any of these essays are sounding good to you folks, all you have to do is follow the link, make the right pledge, and tell us you go write that. And you know what? We'll go write that. I'll get these talented people and I'll turn them loose on it. And that's a promise. That's a promise. And you guys make me feel so good that you got that you guys didn't have one slam dunk choice, because I was down to the wire on the film that I eventually went with, Frankenstein the Monster from Hell, and I have been dying for an excuse to write about a 1980 film called Effects, which is best described as George A. Romero adjacent, because it's so many people that he had worked with and is usually associated with doing their own thing and coming up with something that is they're not interested in social commentary to the degree and the scope that Romero is, but it just asks so many questions about horror films, why we want to watch them.
The nature
And
of voyeurism.
it even dares to question whether or not it's always healthy that we like these kind of movies. And wow, is there anything more transgressive than a horror movie that questions watching horror movies? And quick shout out to the circumstances I saw it. It was at our local Alamo Draft House. Started at 10:30 on a Saturday night. So I went up driving up there when the bars were closing. And normally they have these great video screens with the posters, and the one for our theater had shorted out and it was just pitch black. And me and the friend I went with were half the people in the theater. And like, when the person came out to take our order who didn't, like start eating our brains and sucking our blood, I'm like, okay, all right, count your blessings here. So I that's a film I feel like somebody ought to get into, and I may do it if one of my other talents.
Are you gonna make everybody like hit that pledge button to find out why you picked Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell? Or is that one kind of like what I've been talking about, to see it through new eyes, because that's usually kind of considered kind of the sad coda of the series, so
well, I don't want to be the one talking, especially when I'm surrounded by much more interesting and talented people than myself. But since you asked, I'll give the very two reasons why I did Frankenstein the Monster from Hell is because we are being currently drowned in sequels, remakes, and reimagining, and this is a sequel in a very long running series, which is basically all about, please let this series die. Please stop making these movies. It's the anti-sequel. It's the please don't make any more of these. And it's sort of one of the weird things that crossed in my mind was that they were actually shooting this movie at the same time that Donald Fagen and Walter Becker were in the studio laying down their first big hit, Do It Again. And it finally hit me that Do It Again and Frankenstein from the Monster from Hell are the exact same story in different media.
Okay.
So there you go. I mean, they were a continent apart. There's no way either could have known or the other, but it's just me doing a back and forth between the song and the movie, how they're the same story.
Yeah.
So,
well,
that I couldn't turn down.
I've liked it better on recent watches because it's like what I call the Hello Dolly effect, because Hello Dolly was a big bomb because it came out against all, Easy Rider and all the 60s innovators. But when you watch it now, you don't really know that it was made in the 60s. It could have been made in the 50s, the 40s, and it just is on its own. And Monster from Hell's kind of the same thing with the Exorcist and it was up against, Chainsaw and all these kind of, new wave of films, and it was so old fashioned. But you watch it now and it's like you don't notice it was made in 72 or whenever it was made. It seems like it could have been made 10 years before.
Yeah,
kind of works better because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting Volume 4 to be so hammer heavy, but yeah, it really does speak to how, by the fact that they're gothic, their films just kind of naturally age well. So yeah, amazing stuff there. All righty. Well, we've been at this for almost 45 minutes. And like I said, I'm so blessed to be surrounded by so many talented people, and they're doing other talented stuff. So we always give a chance to you, for those of you guys that dig these people as much as I do, give you a chance to track down other things they've got going on, either that just came out or they're working on. And Tim, what sort of things have you been up to lately? Anything you want to say for the people that want to see where you're going with your many creative endeavors?
David Rains and I, the writers, creators of No Resistance, have been working all summer on a screenplay or a screenplay and a half that is nothing like or has to do with No Resistance. It's a very modern riff on a Corman kind of vibe, I hope. And we're laying down some scripts in the hope of going into production with some really cheap features next year.
Oh, but so full of imagination and ideas as always. So
yeah.
Wow. Well, I am totally looking forward to that already. and Lisa, I know this is going to be awesome. But what awesome things are you up to?
Right now, just trying to get through the Halloween season, pretty much. It is my busy time of year, the next 3 months, really, because now it goes into November, and I will be on dozens of podcast and television shows and radio shows and newspaper articles, and my calendar just looks like a crazy Halloween quilt right now. So beyond that, I should mention that in mid-October I will again be teaching my 3-session course on the history of Halloween through Atlas Obscura. You can sign up for that at atlasobscura.com. I did that last year, loved it. It was really fun. So they asked me back, and I am trying to work around kittens to finish a novel for my agent.
I love when academia nails it like that. I mean, literally, no better person to teach that. That's awesome. All righty, now, Mike, we don't want if you're planning something shady, we don't want to get you in trouble with the law here, because we may have some 5-0 tapping in here. But what sort of legal things are you up to these days? I'm kidding. He's a good man.
Yeah, you never know who's going to be watching these things. Yeah. Well, we both have our days where we're not sure if Kickstarter is a Ponzi or an Amway or what. But we're both trying concurrent with this campaign. I'm trying to do a short campaign for my comic book, Drive-In Kings of 1977, as it says on the little crawl here. And I collected the first 3 issues to be kind of like a catalog title and try to bring new people in before I start the campaign for the 4th issue. Hopefully right around Labor Day, right on Labor Day Sunday, when they used to have the Dusk to Dawn Drive-In 5 feature things. Maybe that's when I'll do issue 4. But so right now it's for the collected catch-up version. Everybody can jump right in, and then going hard with the issue 4 campaign very soon.
It was either go to Drive-In all night or stay home and watch Jerry Lewis. And
yeah.
I don't think how much Mike and I were the guys that made the right choice there. And hey, here you go. There's the link for those of y'all that want to check that out. That's going to live on in the comments for this page. So if like we have talked you into supporting Drive-In Kings, or I have successfully persuaded you into backing Transgressive Horror, the links to these will live on in the comments section down there below. So
we will cross promote like crazy.
Yeah, for a reasonable price, you can get both Mike and I to come to your house. If your grass is getting out of control, or seriously, we take very, very seriously our responsibility to make sure that wonderful writers like these, that their stuff actually gets out there.
We will read from the books in your living room.
I got a nice email the other day asking if we were doing an audiobook, and then I started pricing what it's like to do an audiobook these days, and I'm like I've never raised this much money total for anything. It's like I'd have to do it myself and do the voices.
My daughter did an audio book, so yeah.
Oh wow! Okay, okay, we got some talent in the family. I was just terrified. I would get to like Tim's essay, and it's like, all right, what voice have I got left here? Okay, Randy the Macho Man Savage. Okay, here we go. Tim's essay by me as the Macho Man. So yeah, I didn't know if anybody really needed to hear that or not. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys, as always, for loaning your talents and your time to go show. I'm the most blessed man in the universe because I get to work with really talented, super people like you all, and I so appreciate it. And to those of you who support us, if this is your first time supporting us, or your first, your second, or your fourth, wow, thank you so much for making it all happen for us. And we're well on our way to being able, we just cracked $4,000 in the first week. Yeah. So looking forward to bringing you a really, really super good book, and hopefully many more to come. And thank you all for joining us tonight on the BAMF podcast. Please keep an eye on the Ghost Show Facebook page. We're trying to nail down the details on the next one. I'm trying to shoot for next Saturday afternoon with all of our UK based creators. We're trying to work around the Doctor Who like time zone thing between us. Because apparently when they when I'm really in the mood to podcast, they want to sleep or crazy.
Mhm.
But anyway, keep an eye on all our social media, and the Kickstarter page. We'll make an announcement as soon as we have everything nailed down. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for supporting us. And we'll be back next week. Until then, this has been the Ghost Show. And wrong button. There you go.